We're just about ready to get started. Just wait for a few stragglers. By a show of hands, could you tell me how many people have downloaded the online SDKs? It's pretty much the sample help file or the sample files to demonstrate how to start creating applications for online. Okay. Anybody find them useful? I'm sorry.
The link is missing.
No, it's there. It is there. When you log in. Tomorrow, for my sessions, just a little bit of insight. The first one for online applications starts off bare bones. And how to get connected and validate with the system. The second one is going to go much further in depth and show how to work with different user contexts for working with as a normal user. Pretty much the workflow from an administrator installing the application to users being able to log in and use the functionality of your application. And then also talk more about the background task capability of using the system user and the dependencies that that requires. Tomorrow morning, when we start those sessions, I'll also have republished a new set of samples online so that you can grab those and start to work with them either during that session or tomorrow night, or bring those to the workshop on day 3, and we'll make sure that you understand how to get those up and running. We want it, obviously, to be as simple as possible, as easy as possible to understand. But these are not easy to understand concepts. Federated authentication is completely new to us. What I'm experiencing is it's taken a considerable amount of time for all of our existing partners who have built elaborate integrations and customizations and products who haven't done cloud computing yet or cloud applications. It's difficult to get the head around how federated authentication works. And what are these token things? And what are these certificate things? And how do they all fit together? And what pieces do I need to have where in order for it to just work harmoniously? It's not trivial. It's probably one of the hardest things that I've had to get my head around with when it comes to SuperOffice development. So it's exciting to have something new in order to be able to work with like this. So I'm really looking forward to sharing with you all of the things that I've learned in those lessons tomorrow. So then it comes down to be, well, why become an online application vendor? Why? Same reason as anything else. Money, money, money! Money! Right? Now, I know exactly what you're thinking. Half of the room, thank you. Oh, now you just sort of ruined my joke because I know that half of you are probably thinking something like this. The managers, the guys who got to pay the bills, and the rest of you, of course, are probably thinking something like this. It's only logical. But that's basically what you as partners do, is you take something like SuperOffice and you make it even better. And we see a lot of creativity and a lot of initiative in various areas that could complement SuperOffice in some very good ways. So we really look forward to being able to work with you and show you how to work with SuperOffice so that you have access to all of the customers that we currently have online today. And as our growth continues to grow, that you'll be able to grow exponentially as well along with us. Who's going to write the next killer app? Y'all want to. Why not? Just do it. Right, so that's what partners do every day. You go ahead and you take something that we create and you make it even better. As we bring you into our online fold, let me bring somebody up here that knows this aspect of the business more than anyone. She's the person that you interact with first and foremost when it comes to integrating in online. So with that, let me go ahead and introduce Catherine Davis. Please take it away.
Thank you. Hi, I'm excited to see you all here. And I, for one, is convinced that the App Store is a key or play a vital role in our future success, and in yours too, I'm sure. And Guttorm said it earlier, quite nonchalantly, I thought, we're not going to host any partner cloud in our cloud, so you really just have to create your own clouds. And all these guys before me have explained that that is quite hard work and is quite difficult, so why do it? And the money, 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 and as Gisle said, the world has gone cloud. The cloud is the main thing. So of course, all new customers, a lot of our existing customers are talking cloud. And when we know that 7 out of 10 customers want a link, a module, an integration of some sort, there is a huge business opportunity. And what the App Store does, by having a one-stop shop and presenting all of your partner modules to customers and prospects alike, it just means that you will get more business. For customers, it's brilliant. It is finally one place I can go and I will find everything. Instead of having to find out from individual sales who may or may not know about what the options are, it's going to be one place, easy. And having a menu of apps means that I'm going to be able to whet my appetites. I'm going to see what's possible and go, get new ideas. And again, it's going to allow me to grow my business and buy more apps. And because it's from SuperOffice, I know I can trust it, it's safe, it works. So ultimately, we know that more customers are going to be able to say yes to SuperOffice because there are apps and integrations there. And that also means that more customers are going to be able to say yes to your apps and products because it's in the App Store. So this means that we are going to increase the number of customers available and for you and for us, and we're going to make them happier. And that's good, right? And it also means that there's a new channel for you to sell your products because we are literally creating a marketplace and the customer will buy from you, not from us. And that allows you to focus on your core business, which is creating brilliant apps and creating other services that allow customers to do more, work smarter. And it's also going to help us to to focus on our core business because this is a mutual thing. The business model here is really I scratch your back, you scratch mine. So if you're in my App Store, I'm going to be in yours. And together, that way, we're going to increase the market share, we're going to increase the leads and the customers together. And if that's not good enough reason, then as Tony said, who doesn't want to create the next killer app? The world is going app crazy, and there is an app for everything. And as consumers, we are consumers first, and then we're business professionals, and we know that we use apps for everything now. So we'd like to challenge you to come up with that great new killer app and make it work, make it scalable, make it safe and secure, which is what these 3 days in the future is all about. Be creative geniuses. And most of you already have registered as a partner, and we have on our community site a place for that. And the next thing to do after that is to register your app. And even if your app idea is not quite fully developed, we want you to register it, because then you get access to a test installation, as well as a unique app ID and token, which that together gives you access to our sandbox environment, where you can play and learn and explore. And literally, this is what Jens talked about, the more complicated. This is my easier version of what he presented. But it's where it all happens, where you develop. When you think you have a ready app, you send it in to us for the certification. And that's when Margrethe and Christian comes in and try to find holes, and together make it better. And I think the majority of the people who have already submitted an application have found it very useful. It's taken a bit longer than they hoped, but it's been a very valuable process. At the same time, they start talking to me. Get the description and get the marketing materials in so we can get your app's listing ready. So when it is certified, we're ready to go, and we can get you listed. It starts always off in beta. And why this? It's because it's early days. We all want to learn. And we found that we want to optimize the process, get some hands-on experience with you. And also, that's been useful for you as well, I think. So we're starting off in beta, and that's been, so far, a very valuable time. And I'm repeating a slide here, but what's interesting here is that we're talking to you. We're also talking to a number of new partners, and what we're seeing is a lot of creativity. We want more and different broad apps in our app store that allows our customers to do more than what it does today. That I go in there and I get an app, and I can populate my database instantly. I can move information that's in my CRM system into another system that does more with it. And we really are talking to you, and we're talking to a lot of partners, and we're hoping that together we can make something very, very attractive for our customers. Of course, as been mentioned earlier, we know that they have customers who require individual customizations. And some of the apps that you provide may be one that they have to customize a bit. But the majority, really, we want is the standard apps, where they are listed in the App Store and they are certified and made available for everybody else, as opposed to a custom app, which will not be listed, but we're using the APIs in the same manner. Now, Margrethe and I have a session tomorrow morning where we're going to talk a little bit more about how we go through the partner onboarding and the security audit and then the certification process. And we do appreciate that the runway is being built as we speak, but the apps, you guys, are taking off. And we have some in our App Store already. And more importantly, we have some customers who've been starting to use it and to give really good feedback. And the operations are seeing that this works. They're monitoring using Mark's wonderful things, and it works. So we're really, I'm sure that next year, when we're meeting together, that there's going to be a lot more apps in the App Store, and we have a lot more interesting figures to talk about in monitoring, and customer stories and successes to talk about. And that's all I want to say until I meet you tomorrow if anybody needs more. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to talk to you just a little bit more about the online SDK and some of the aspects there. Earlier, I talked a little bit about sort of how the SDK sort of evolved over the years. So now, when we get to online, we're talking about database mirroring and federated authentication. These are the two main capabilities that have evolved over the course of the last 18 months. Database mirroring is actually relatively new, and it's a very interesting concept and topic that I think that is going to take some of the limitations that SuperOffice Online, as an app's point of view, away. It's going to take some of those limitations away. Because database mirroring is basically being able to take a customer's database in the cloud and bring that and make it available to you as a partner app and work with it locally within your environment and provide some extra capability. Now, Moderic's going to go into great detail about it during his session on the third day, so please go ahead and attend him, because this is a very significant aspect and capability for the online SDK. Federated authentication, I talked a little bit about, where I find probably one of the biggest challenges is people's getting their head around all of the different moving parts and where those parts fit together and the interdependencies. And I'm going to go ahead and cover those in great length through my sessions as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about the REST capability. Christian Mogensen's actually invested a significant amount of time, both professional and personal time, in order to bring this capability to the product. So if you do anything tonight, make sure to thank him for his investment in this area, because it is very cool, and he's going to demonstrate it for us. Unified document plugin. Who's not been waiting for that one? Every document plugin provider has witnessed the pain that it takes to be able to create both a .com or a .com version of a plugin, and then also the .NET server version of a plugin if you want it to be able to be deployed in multiple locations. And figuring that out hasn't been simple. There are a lot of sort of dependencies there, and they're not so obvious. So those that have been successful at doing it, I congratulate you at being able to figure all that out. Now, you have to change all that stuff. Not true. It's going to be a very natural progression to go from what it is with just writing a net server plugin today to being able to write a unified document plugin. It's going to be targeted net server, and the Windows client will use that as well. One document plugin, both Win, web, anywhere. Well, not online. Don't feel the need to clap. It's okay. No. It's okay. But you have Christian to thank for that as well. So please thank him for that. NuGet packages. It pains me that I can't actually demonstrate and announce the release of it today. But NuGet packages are at the forefront of any developer's life today. You can't go and work with Visual Studio and not use NuGet packages in your product. It's just so convenient to be able to get the latest and greatest code just by building your app. It goes, it looks on the NuGet server, is there a newer version, is it compatible, bam, download it, install it, and it's running. We want to be able to take what we've offered in the past in our SDK, those periodic every 2-year releases, and change that to be more in line with our continuous delivery model, so that we can start to upgrade and give you patched versions of the SDK, the DLLs, the assemblies, in packaged formats that make sense to you. That's coming. Any feedback that you have for us in that regard, please share that with me. Share that with any of the main team members, be it Madik, Christian, Jens, Svata, Stian, any of the guys. You want to talk about NuGet packages, how we're using it, and how we plan on using it. Feel free to ask them, and tell them what your needs are and how you think that it should actually work for your products. When it comes to the online SDK, we have to talk about limitations. I could sit here and tell you all of the capabilities that it has, but I would only be telling you all of the capabilities that you can do inside the admin client. All of the cool capabilities that you can do, the putty, the Play-Doh, the ability to mold and fold a CRM web installation into anything you basically want in an on-premise installation doesn't exist in on-cloud yet. Gautam gave you about a 2-year timeline on the capabilities to do that. I'm going to hold him to that, 2 years. Get rid of some of these limitations. But I know that the team has already been thinking about these for many months, actually. When we first started talking about online, we started talking about tooling and, of course, access to partner-defined tables and how you would access those sort of things, how you would create custom dialogues, how you would do eventing and hooking into those events and when those things happen. All of these discussions, they're an ongoing discussion. Things just don't happen overnight. There are a lot of different stakeholders, there are a lot of different opinions, and eventually everybody will converge on the smartest and most stable, rock-solid way to do it. And that is coming. It's going to have to come. Some of the things that you can do in online, of course, providing custom archive providers in an on-premise installation, great. You got a new partner-defined table, throw a little code generation at it, spit out an archive provider, and then you can put out a window and see it and have the same look and feel that SuperOffice does in probably about an hour or less. When it comes to online, you can't put binaries into the website's bin folder because it's shared amongst potentially hundreds of customers. It's one file set for many different customers. So you can't just add in a DLL there and expect it not to impact more than one customer at a time. So we need to figure out how to do those sort of things better. Same thing with data handlers, JavaScript handlers, the Ajax handlers, custom dialogues. We have a little bit more flexibility there, but then you still depend on a data handler in order to do some of the data binding and populating your form with data and then persisting that data when the guy clicks on save. So there's a lot of work to be done there. Quote connectors, not happening yet. Document plugins, Sentry plugins, DBI integrations, EJ scripting. EJ scripting is still there. That's one of the good news. So a lot of the investments that you've done towards EJ scripting and customizations for customer service installations is actually going to work online. There are some limitations. I don't have a slide dedicated towards what those limitations are, but the information will come out shortly. We'll create a blog post about it. But EJ scripting still lives on. In fact, that's probably one of your best integration customization capabilities going forward. So I've looked at the forums, I see the activity, and customer service has just been on fire for a couple of years now. So I know partners are working with customer service in a very significant way, doing some really cool things out there, and they're still going to be able to do and take a lot of that work and all of that experience into cloud as well. User management. There are certain things that we don't want people to be able to do. Your app should not have to manage users inside customer installations. That's what admin is for, settings and maintenance. You go in there, they work with users, they work with roles. If you can give us some very good scenarios and reasons why we should allow you to modify customers' users, by all means, let us know. It's not to say that we're not ever going to allow that capability, because the capability is there, but it's not switched on by default, and it requires a very, very good reason as to why we would want to turn something like that on. Database mirroring is the same thing. Requires checkbox. That's about it. You check that on, then you have access, and you got the capability set up. Again, we just need reasons, and of course, your application definitions, your applications that exist today. Nobody could have ever thought that we would have that capability, 10 years ago. There's some very unique things that are out there, some very unique solutions. And I'm sure that somebody's going to come up with a very good reason as to why they want that capability and leverage it. No anonymous users. Anybody writing batch tasks at all for working in on-premise installations? Nobody? Wow. Okay. Well, then you're not going to miss that one. Still use it on-premise, though. But now let's go a little bit forward. We want to break away from all those limitations and be able to show you some of the things that you can do online, or at least talk about them in general terms. You know, sort of the idea is the concepts behind how we sort of envision you as partners to be able to create these types of applications. And these are sort of things that I term on application models. And there's only 3 of them, really. It's pretty simple. You're either going to have an internal application, something that exists inside SuperOffice and inside SuperOffice only. You can imagine somebody's surfing their SuperOffice, you know, and then they go to the App Store, they want to install an application, they click to install it, you go to their website, your partner website for their shopping cart, you purchase it, and then it's provisioned. The customer is forwarded back to, when the user logs in for your application, he has to approve access. We're going to go through all this on my session. You approve access, and then the partner app receives everything that they're going to need to be able to connect to your database. And at that point, they can automatically provision whatever it is that they need, web panels or buttons or information. There's a lot of different capabilities there. I'll explain a little bit more about that pretty soon. But if it's automatically provisioned and it exists and it only exists inside SuperOffice, and you never have to navigate away SuperOffice to configure or manage or work with their application, I consider that an internal sort of application model. The other one, of course, is external. So this is the one, we got some really good examples of external applications out there. You know, the if, this, then, that sort of applications. Connect My Apps is a really good example. Yeah. Applications that are sort of hybrids, applications that you install, configure on the partner's website, and then the things appear, you know, whether or not they're visual or interactive is dependent on you. But anytime you need to make like configuration changes or anything like that, you'll travel to the partner website, make those configuration changes, be rerouted back to SuperOffice, and you'll see those changes. That's what I would consider a hybrid model. So internal, external, and hybrid. A very good example of an internal model would be economic, where you install it, it's provisioned, and it's available inside SuperOffice. You never have to go to their website in order to configure it. It's all there inside SuperOffice. Connect My Apps is a great example of an external website that has the capability to say, well, when this happens inside SuperOffice, make this happen inside this other application, right? A hybrid model could be Business Analyze, where you install their application, they provision the application, and you have both the capabilities to configure the reports inside SuperOffice or in their website. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Automatic provisioning. This is something that we haven't prioritized at this point. We haven't said you have to automatically provision your apps, but we highly recommend it. Imagine, you remember in the days when you installed Pocket CRM and you had to type in the URL in order to make that work? Now if you do it online, you don't, because it automatically knows that information. So we take that pain away. That's sort of the same type of pain that we want to get away from customers who are installing apps, just like you do on your smartphones. You want to install an app, you don't have to configure anything. Next, finish, install, pay, buy, whatever, you're done. You don't need to know about, go through 5-page wizard and fill out 20 different text boxes or check boxes or option dialogues. It's just all done for you because you have that capability. Now you have more capability in the online web admin client than you do in Windows. First time ever in the history of SuperOffice. You can do more in web admin than you can in the Windows admin. And it's not because they have special access to the database or anything like that. They don't. They're all going through the services APIs that have grown quite a bit in the last couple of years. So you have unlimited capability for modifying, configuring, setting up panels, setting up buttons, importing data. I got a few more slides about that coming up. So the experience is you're browsing the App Store, you want to install an application, so then you view the application, and then you click on Get It. You're probably going to be forwarded off to the partner's website because, well, there are certain business restrictions for this today, beta periods and those sort of things. Once a partner comes out of beta period, you get forwarded to the partner's website, your website. The customer is allowed to purchase your application. And then he has to log in to Super ID, our federated authentication, one URL point. And then you have to, the user has to give authorization to your application for him to access, for you to access his database. Once that's done, you have unlimited access. You get everything that you need, credentials, URL, access to his web services so that you can configure the application automatically. You can provision lists, list items, web panels, user-defined fields, preferences, licensing, import operations, workflows for sales and projects. All that stuff. Everything that you can do inside admin, you can do through services. Now, you as a partner, I don't know, you're sitting on a fence and you're possibly thinking on one side of it, you know, this is actually kind of a bad thing because I like to make consultancy dollars. Sometimes, that's sort of been the mentality. And some customers will actually prefer that hand-holding experience, and that's totally fine. We don't prevent that, But think about it from the user's perspective. Everything that we've done is to try and improve the user's experience so that he's got that next finished experience. And the greater that you can improve that experience for him, the greater experience he'll have for your product, and the greater experience he'll have overall. So, and that's sort of the end goal. That's what we want. Make the product even better. After he approves the application, it's provisioned, the web panel is installed. I don't have to do anything. The customer doesn't have to do anything. It's just there, and the functionality exists. Some of the things that we are still working on, as I like that slide that Catherine had of the plane taking off with the runway under construction, because when it comes to our applications, there are certain limitations as well for how we want that user experience to be that are not quite done yet. And those are, it's great, customers can get their applications installed into your product and have a very good experience, but what happens when they want to uninstall? We're getting there. So by February, we'll have all that stuff figured out and everything will be working. But just the sort of, complete transparency. Things are in progress, but things are happening every single day. Early opportunities. Catherine's talking about become a partner if you haven't already. Go and apply, create an application registration. Tell us what it is you're going to build. And if you don't know, that's okay too. Just sort of have some sort of vague idea. I just want to play. And then you'll have access. You'll get access to our sandbox. A sandbox known as SuperOffice Online Development. SOD, S-O-D. You'll see that quite a bit, actually. Get in there. Start to play with it. Understand how things work, because it's going to take time to get your head around it. I guarantee it. Flexible application models. Again, we're not preaching about whether or not you should stay inside SuperOffice or be completely outside of it. That's completely up to you. Code once, support multiple scenarios. Anybody here ever attend a NetServer training session when I taught it? A few people? Do you remember how many times I used to sort of talk about when it comes to NetServer Web Services code and you're writing agents and using our proxies, that's actually what we want you to do. Because underneath that idea is that you're going to be able to write your code once and deploy it in multiple locations. I write my code once using that layer of abstraction, modify the configuration file, and deploy it to an installation on-premise, and it will just work, whether it's in a domain or whether it's a distributed environment, calling across the internet, calling through web services, all that. It's the same code base. And you're going to hear me stress that over and over again going forward as well, because now it's even more significant. You write that code once, it's going to deploy not just locally in your on-premises installations, but online as well, because you're writing against the services API. And it's just a switch that you do in a configuration file, whether or not you want to work with something in a local domain environment or work with online web services. And when it comes down to working with it online, the configuration stuff, all of that stuff just goes away. You just deploy your code, and it will work. Database mirroring capability. When we think about the limitations that you have as a partner, you got buttons, navigator buttons, button bar buttons, and web panels, and that's really about it. Links to your site or links to functionality inside SuperOffice for an internal application. What kind of capabilities do you get when you take a copy of SuperOffice into your local installation, pretty much have unlimited access, and it's not real-time information, real-time data that you have, but it's going to be pretty close to regularly interval updates. 15 minutes is what we were talking about, thinking about database mirroring. Depends on your application, I guess, and your usage, and how much activity is going on the customer. But again, not real time, but not days later either. So it's going to be relatively up-to-date information to be able to work with. Great for reporting. Thank you very much to Business Analyze for helping us work out those APIs. And yeah, it's a very, very interesting thing that I don't even think we understand how good it's going to be for the capabilities in an online environment going forward. So definitely a 10-mark session on the third day to look forward to that. REST APIs. In online coming soon. The online team is working very hard to make sure that we get a very solid OAuth 2 capability so that we can just give you a single ASP.NET web plugin that you install in your startup config, like you do the Google login, like you do a Facebook login, or like you do other types of federated authenticated logins. And you'll have a Super ID login as well, so that you can just drop that in, enable it in the configuration, and then you'll get a login with Super ID button on the web API and the web interface. There are certain things that need to be worked out before that capability comes. It's really, really, really close, actually. This sort of authentication, some of the things that we're doing there affect multiple areas. It's not just to have a good federated authentication experience for our partners in the apps. It's also indirectly for ERP sync is going to be using the same ceremony for getting authenticated and secure communications. So there are other things that depend on this as well. So it is coming, and it's coming pretty soon. For the on-premises Expander SDK, things that are going on there, of course, the document plugin, unified document plugin. Who here likes to write lower-level objectified SQL using NetServer? Moderick and Patrick and Otto. Got it. And a couple others. Me, I actually enjoy it quite a bit too. Now, Mark, I know has used this, so I have to ask. Is anybody else using the sort of linkified capabilities to query data? Or are you finding yourself still using table infos and field infos, return fields, and things like that to get information? So this capability has been in there for almost 2 years now. So I do want to sort of highlight that and talk a little bit more about that because it's such a nice, elegant way to write your code, and it's more intuitive to see it using linkified, lambdas, those sorts of structures to query the database at that lower level. And I'll talk a little bit about that in my NetServer 101 session tomorrow. While I'm talking about NetServer 101 session tomorrow, if you guys write NetServer code using OSQL, rows, and the entities, if you've attended my trainings in the past, this is probably not the class you want to go to because it's basically the SDK course for NetServer back then. So just going to throw that out there. This is for the guys who are just getting started here with you as partners. Your new employees, newer consultants, things that people that do like to tinker and are going to be writing some NetServer code. This is the course to send them to get them up to speed on how to start writing some of the NetServer code. So we got half of it focused on lower level APIs, and then half of it focused on the web service APIs so that you're going to understand how to write code to work towards online as well. True web service version and strategy. We did announce this 18 months ago at the previous Expander World, where we had, we were actually releasing 7.5 at the time. We was in beta, I think. 7.3 had been out for a little while for online. And we were actually telling people to, write 7.3 code or target the 7.3 services to work in the 7.5 environment. Today, we've got version 8 that's out there and up there in the cloud, and we're telling you now to write towards 7.5 APIs. And why am I telling you not to work towards the 8.0 APIs? Where's Jens? Why? Because not all of the customers are up on 8 yet. Imagine a customer who is up on the next version. You're writing a code that has a capability that goes towards the latest version, but another customer finds your app in the App Store because we don't have that filter in place yet to say, well, he's on 7.5, only show him the 7.5 apps. But he'll install it anyway, and then he's trying to use some 8 capability that doesn't exist in 7.5. We try our best to massage that so that if he is using some of those 8 APIs, and he's only on 7.5, there will be some limitations as to what he can do, some better handling. But yeah. Does it really matter? Are you going to new up a new 7.5 class? No. But all of our latest code will give you the capability for all of our latest APIs. So what does that mean? It's confusing. You're going to write code towards services. You're going to new up a new entity, contact entity. You're not going to think if it's inside a 7.5 namespace or if it's in an 8.0 namespace. You don't need to do that. So that's basically what I mean. Yeah. Full version and support is there. If you write your application targeting 7.5, it's going to work for all the customers that come hereafter for the next 10 versions. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. With every 2-week iterations, yes. There you go. Guaranteed. No. It will work for a lot longer than that. But true versioning, we talked about this, and it was sort of a wish for a very long time, but it's there now. So that's great. REST Web Services on premises works today. So, as I understand it, in order to get access to on-premise CRM 8, or just all our products version 8, you have to go and become a beta program member, which you can do on your profile page in the community. You go to your profile page, you find the beta tab, enable it, and for the beta program, version 8, there's a hiccup where you have to log off and then log back in to be granted access to the project or the page where those downloads exist. Sorry? That's my fault. I'll try and fix that. But that's what you need to do. You want version 8 today? You're going to go up and you're going to play with it tonight like Eric told you after a couple of beers. If you find that page, your profile page, enable it, log off, log back in, and then you'll have access to the downloads. I'm sorry for that experience. We will try and improve that going forward. Authenticating connectors, I did talk a little bit about this, so it's very, very close to be able to have a similar authenticated and secure experience with both ERP sync connectors and online app consumers, vendors. CTI phone link preference. This is so much bigger than I ever thought it would be. I must be like the odd duck that doesn't use the click to call functionality inside SuperOffice. I'm sort of a phone addict and bam. But we've had interviews with 6 CTI phone vendors who want the ability to put a CTI integration in online and on our web apps in general and on-premise. And it has been a very sort of intense discussion about how to actually get that done. When it comes to on-premise, you can do it, but it actually requires quite a bit of customization to get it done, and other vendors that are out there have done it. When it comes to online, just didn't have that capability because the phone preference capability, the ability to add in a new CTI and online is different, right? You can't invoke that EXE that takes in some sort of phone number that knows how to do the lookup and then execute the call. And online, you need to execute some URL, and our parameters didn't support that. So what we've added now is the new capability to add in a CTI integration via a URL link and define the protocol that you want to appear before that URL is invoked, whether it's tell or pre or whatever it is. There's a few out there. I'm not the expert. But this is not going to replace what's already in Windows. It's going to actually be in addition to. So it's not to use configure one and it will work for both. You know, Windows has a very tight sort of arrangement on how it works. The newer capability is going to be in addition to. So if you want the online capability, online CTI capability, then you're going to need to use the online preferences for CTI. More information about that will come out, whether it's a blog post and an article, and included inside the documentation. So look for that further when 8 is closer to release out of beta. Any questions? Okay, so who's interested in REST? Nobody. Go home.
All right. We can skip that.
All right. No, we don't need to. Christian is going to go ahead and walk you through some of the REST capabilities and the APIs. So enjoy.
All right. There we go. We have about 10 minutes to go. I think I'll be just fine. So REST is basically how the web does stuff. So you have things like verbs. Your web browser, every time you click on something in Chrome or Internet Explorer, it does a get on something like a URL. And so in our SOAP API, we've had, we have a lot of different functions, and they're sort of spread over lots of different agents. We've taken those services and kind of repackaged them in a different way. And so over the summer, while most people were away, I kind of sat down and tried to figure out how could I take all these services and kind of wrap them up in a way that didn't involve lots of typing. And I succeeded to a certain extent. I ended up having to do some typing anyway. But we ended up with some URLs that look like this. Sort of, you can say you have there's an API, and underneath there's like a version, and then underneath that there are various things. Now, my brother does REST API stuff, professionally, and so I have to explain that this is REST-ish. It's not true REST. In true REST, there would be, a web page has links to other web pages, and similarly, if you got a contact, you would get links to all the other related things on it. We don't have that. That would turn out to be too much work. But as long as you know the way the URLs are built up, you can sort of get things anyway. So we have a bunch of different entities and different kinds of things there. So we have all of the big entities like person and contact and project. Those are all there as things that you can go and get. You can also update them and delete them and create new ones using all the normal HTTP mechanisms. All the different built-in lists have nice little APIs for those as well, so you can get a list of all the items, you can get individual ones, you can update the individual items, and so on. The archive providers are all provided in a nice format, and you can provide sort of query parameters and things in a standard way. We'll show you a couple of examples of that afterward. Things like preferences and licenses, these are things which we have in the service API, which we can present in a sort of little nicer, more easily accessible URL-based system. And then all the agents that we have in the service API are also available through kind of this API for simplicity's sake. For if there's some functionality that you really want, but which we haven't wrapped up in a sort of a nice new way, you can go call it, from your browser if you really want to. And so the web API system that Microsoft sort of provides us, the infrastructure has built-in support for documentation. So I figured, and we have lots of documentation also, so we can pull some of that up. So by default, the web API is kind of self-documenting. You can sort of you hit the top URL there, the sort of API services 80, and it will tell you, like, here are all the methods, and here are all the things you can call, and some of the things you should be able to get back. This is just something it's stuff I put together over the summer, so it's not terribly sexy. And I'm trying to figure out, there's some other projects out there that do an even better job of this. There's something called Swashbuckle and some other systems that let you not only sort of look at the API, but also try out the API, sort of push a button to see what the API does and generate proxies and things like that for it. But that's not in there yet. In fact, all of this stuff is not really finished. So even if you take the build, the beta build, the API, the REST API doesn't really work. It's turned off because we're now getting into this continuous deliveries way of working. We have to deliver functionality, that we develop functionality, but we don't deliver it all, in increments. We have to sort of write the code and then, deliver pieces of it. But there's some things which are hard to deliver in pieces, So this is something that we've the code is there, but it's not turned on. We have a system called feature toggles, which lets us turn stuff off. So if you want to play with this, there's some magic incantations to turn it on. So in order for it to work in the beta. By the time we get to release, hopefully that'll be, it'll just be part of the full release. But come to my talk tomorrow, and you can learn the magic words. No. So the API is actually, they basically just built on top of the service layer that we have, but it's structured in a sort of a nicer way. So, for example, the top one there says, give me a person. That gives you a list of all the persons. That's an archive provider. So that would go through, that's a query based off of the archive agent. Create, the second line is create a new person entity. So that's on the person agent. That's a completely different place in the service API. But in the REST API, it's all kind of gathered together in one place. So it's a little easier to find your way around this. Things like that. So list of activities for a particular person. That's an archive provider with a restriction on it. But that's something you don't think about. It's provided for you automatically. And you can see from the first word here, we support all the different sort of HTTP verbs, so you can get and put and post and delete. We can manipulate all this stuff, and it gets all translated into the service layer calls. So here's an example of a call. Like, so here's a URL that says, get me person 3. And we get back a nice little XML representation of person number 3 with name and phone numbers and URLs and all that stuff. And the structure of this information is exactly the same as the person agent's representation. So like the structure of the things that you get back are the same. It's not different from the service agents that you know and love. Like the shape of the objects are the same. They're just easier to get to, at least. So, of course, in the, that was XML. And of course, XML is now old and busted. And the new hotness is JSON. So if we add an HTTP header to our request and say, we would like JSON, we get JSON back. And of course, then you can do JavaScript to modify this and then send it back to us as a post or a put to update person 3. So if we go off and ask for person 321/image, we get a blob back from the blob service, the blob agent. We get back a PNG actually, and then we get a bunch of data. So if I put this into a web browser, we get a picture back instead. Yeah, and I can even customize this with I can say, I restrict the dimensions to it. For example, say I want it 50, and I get a small picture instead, which is slightly easier than the 3 or 4 service calls that are sort of hiding behind that little link. So, but how did I know that I was person 321? The way I find that out is by doing a little search. So the archive providers are wrapped up as OData services. So we can say, I want to do a filter here. I want to say last name equal Mogensen and first name equal Christian, and it'll go off and do an archive provider query with those restrictions, and then return the result as a nice little list of results. And so each column, it might be a little hard to read here, but each column basically says, first name and last name and the person ID and so on. And it gives him back an array. Here it's an array of size 11. The first hit was me, so that was, and that's ID 321. So that's how I know. So the nice thing here is that the restrictions are kind of, you can just write them out as SQL-like, and you can use brackets and sort of a nicer way to express these things than the more structured way that the service agents use. User-defined fields also, yes. They would be called something like, person / userdef : 1 or something like that. But yes, if you can use it in an archive provider, or you can add a restriction on an archive provider, you can use it here. There's no... yes, slightly different. So this OData thing is basically Microsoft's attempt to try and standardize this query language for URLs. So here, for example, I'm saying, give me the sale archive, but give me only the sales registered after 2014-11-11, and give me these columns, date, amount, sales status, probability percent, and so on. And then you see project _ name, because slashes, which we use as separators in there, slashes aren't allowed in XML, so we have to change them into something else. So underscore is our friend. So we end up with these little bit strange sort of field names, but they all map sort of one-to-one to the archive provider names. But Excel, among other things, is perfectly happy to take this URL and turn it into a OData, into a spreadsheet. And this is a live feed, so it's every time you open the spreadsheet, Excel will go off and read the data and suck this into itself. So you now have a nice little extraction of the latest sale data sitting inside Excel. And you can use that to do things like pivot charts and things like that. And this is because Excel knows about OData and sort of how to formulate queries, and it can go ask the web service, the web API, what are the columns available here, and what are the types of the columns, and so on. So there's a slew of information available. If you add Power Query to Excel, you get access to all this. And so Power Query is a free add-in from Microsoft you can use to sort of make this a little easier, a little more visual. So you can you get basically all of the different columns from the archive provider. You can say, oh, I want this one and this one and this one. You can pick it from a list instead of having to type, this stuff by hand, which, if you're me, this is, oh yes, of course, like that. But this is not for everyone. So Power Query is a nice add-in if you're going to work with OData. But you can then basically build up your queries like this and just check off a few boxes and say, get me the data, and then build a nice pivot chart on top of that. And not only Excel, there are other products out there. Tableau, for example, it's a web-based or Windows client. So I use the Windows client here. But it's basically a data visualizer. You can take data sources pretty much from anywhere, and it will suck up data from whatever you can plug into it. And it will let you combine them, the data in various ways, and it will let you easily kind of swap axes, and it's like pivot chart on steroids. It's very nice. It does a couple of cool things, like, for example, it recognizes things like, oh, this is a country name field. Country name fields. ooh, I can map that for you. So I took that query from 5 slides ago and plugged it into this, and it said like, oh, country name, yes, I'll map these sales to, geography for you. So this is sale data sort of spread out, just based on the sales company's location field, or country name. And it's like, oh, I didn't have to do anything, but I just had to pick the fields. So that's kind of where we are. The web API is it's a simple sort of API. This is the beauty of the web, right? The API is very, very simple. Where the complexity comes in is kind of all the stuff that's sitting behind it. So all the logic is sitting inside NetServer. But now we just have a very nice set of URLs that you can sort of access the functionality via. And the nice thing about having a simple standardized API is that you can take data from lots of different places and easily combine them. So, it makes it easy to do mashups of data from SuperOffice and data from other places and sort of combine them. And, Microsoft's, and there's other cloud providers like Good Data or Tableau, which basically exists to do exactly this. Give me data from one URL and give me data from another URL, and I'll give you a nice user interface to sort of combine these things. And so then you can start doing data analysis to see how, for example, the weather in your hometown is affecting your sales. And then you get to do lots of false correlation analysis and things like that. Churches cause death. And, oh no, maybe not. So that's where we are. Let's see. We do have time. All right. So yeah. Oh, okay. But the bar opens when? No. Oh, okay. So let's see if we can.
Does anybody want to see a demo of this stuff working in action?
Oh yeah. Yes. All right. Okay.
By the way, this is really cool.
Uh-huh. Okay. So let's start off here. So this is oh no crap. Let's see, duplicate. There we go. Hopefully I have not broken the video recording.
Now we see what you see.
Okay. So when you come visiting the API endpoint for the first time, or the second time for that matter, you get this little overview of which versions we have. So at the moment it's just Services 80. By the time we reach shipping, we should be on Services 8.1. But because I'm still figuring this stuff out, I haven't sort of copied all our code over. So if we go in there, we get a list of all of the endpoints that we have. So we have all of the different entities, and then there are all the lists, and then miscellaneous. Those are archives and license and preference. Basically, these are things which they are not lists and they're not entities. So, they go in there. And then there are all the agents. So good old service agents, like blob and configuration and contact, they're here. And so all the old methods that you know and love, they all exist here. So this is exactly the same as the old SOAP API or WCF, just now with JSON instead. But of course, we're not interested in those. Those are boring. Right. So for example, contact. here's a brief summary of all of the functions on the contact. You see we have, if we say get contact here, we get back, from this one, we get back this OData. Now here, again, I'm just looking at the documentation. If I actually wanted to call this thing, there's one on my list of things to do is like put a button on the documentation to say call the service. So we should say, get contact, like so. Cross fingers. And it should go off and get all of the contacts. Oh yeah, so here is both the JSON and XML representations of thing. Why are you taking so long? Waiting. Why are you? Oh, the embarrassment. Let's see. We can do it like this instead. See, whoop, that went fast. I have no idea why. The other one. Go away, you. So one of the things that's one of the things you didn't see here was a password dialog pop up. Normally it would say, "You're not logged in. Please type in your username and password," because we are using this standard HTTP kind of authentication mechanisms here. So on premises, you could set this up to you would log in using just your username and password, or using a SuperOffice ticket. So if you got a ticket through a web panel URL, you could use that ticket to log in to the web services. In online, we're working on this whole OAuth story to make that possible, because we don't want usernames and passwords kind of flying around too easily. We want to be able to secure access to the to online installations by sort of which app are you, and who are you working on behalf of. We don't want to open up the online endpoints to everyone, to the whole world. We want to know who you are, and also who the user is. So that's why we're doing this whole OAuth thing. But on premise, it's like you can set it up to sort of be a little more open. And then we get back, since I asked for JSON, we get back JSON. So we get back field properties, which are basically all of what I'm allowed to do. And then it says contact ID is 2. There's the name and date, all my interests. And this is exactly the same thing as you'd get back if you called the WCF, contact agents get contact number 2. But now it's a little easier. I didn't have to do any programming here. I just typed in the URL. So progress, yay. All right.
So that was very exciting. It took a little while in order to get the point across. But the point basically is that REST is there. He talked about, well, it's not in there by default. But go to the session and learn how to turn this on and start to play with it. It's not hard. It's there. It's readily available for you. Get past the beta program thing, and you're going to get it. And then you can start to play with these REST web services. And you're going to see that it's very familiar if you, like all of the other rest of the rest of the rest stuff you've been working with. Pocket CRM. We do not have a good SDK story here. The biggest capability that you got now is to be able to put web panels into Pocket CRM on both your smartphones and tablets. Pretty cool? Thank Eric for that one on the way out. But we do want your ideas. We want your ideas about how we can actually make this better. So please, if you got ideas about how we could make Pocket CRM a little bit more extensible, we'd like to listen to them. Maybe you've thought of something that we just haven't. So, send your ideas to sdk@superoffice.com. We'd really appreciate it. So that's it. The SDKs for online is growing. The opportunities are there. You've got free access to the sandbox. Come play with it, learn how it works, and see what sort of ideas you can come up with, the different types of apps that you could actually create that might be able to be published in online. That would be fantastic. Expander SDK is growing ever so slowly, but as you've seen today, there's been a huge investment in the last 18 months and a lot longer than that to get our online infrastructure in place, automated, continuous delivery and deployment, so that we can continuously upgrade and bring the best products to the customers. Tonight, the dinner is going to be at, first, 18:30. At 6:30, we'll have a social hour down here in the conference area. There'll be a welcome drink or beers and wines, and you can use your bones there. For the dinner, at 19:30, we'll be in here. So once we're done having a drink or two, we'll be able to come straight in and have dinner. Between dinner and dessert, we're going to have a comedy show from Dex Carrington. Anybody ever heard of him? He's a funny guy. So be prepared for that. Froda, be prepared for that. So I also want to say a huge thank you to Margareta and also Catherine. Without Catherine's support, this event would not have been as smooth as it has been. So I owe her a huge thank you and lots of gratitude for her efforts to make sure Expander World happened this year. With Margareta, she's put a lot of work into making the registration process and a lot of different things. The support, the things that you guys don't see every single day, and especially for me to make this event happen, those two ladies need a huge thank you. So please say thank you to them. Thank you. All right, so that's all I have. Thank you so much for coming. I love getting your feedback and your questions. Grab me if you guys have any questions, thoughts, ideas, comments, gripes, complaints. Yeah. We'll see you at dinner or at drinks.